Well, good morning, everyone. Lovely to see you all, and lovely to not be able to see other people who are here as well. So hello, everyone out there. Sorry I can't see you. We've got people all the way over here and all the way over there, and well, what an interesting experience this is. And I hope I can live up to Steve's introduction. Thank you for that. I'm Sian, and I've got a message for you this morning about paddocks. So let's start with a story. Here's me out the other side of the ranges here, teaching someone to fly a plane. This one was a lad from Hong Kong. The sequence we were doing was called Practice Forced Landings. Now, why do we call them forced landings? This is a situation where you're forced to land because your engine has failed, which is no biggie, because planes, if you set them up right, immediately turn into gliders, and you can just park them in a paddock. But your choice of paddock is a fairly important one. You really want to choose the right paddock. So here's me extolling the virtues of various paddocks that I can see. So this one over here, it's green, it's lush. That one's in a growth phase, so that one's under crop. And it would probably be quite moist, possibly slippery, possibly soft. Not the best choice. This one over here, you can see it's sort of a gold colour. So this is a ripe crop, it's ready for stripping. And it'll be about this high, the crop. So that'll mess with your head in terms of where the surface actually is, and you'll do a hard landing. So not the ideal choice. This one over here, however, this grey one, that one's stubble, so that one's been stripped, and that one will be firm and solid, and that'll be a really good place to land. Anyway, the lad turns to me and he says, "What is a paddock?" Okay, says me. It's a piece of land surrounded by fences on each side where a farmer would grow a crop. What is a crop? Okay, crop, food. Yeah, we grow food, grains, cereal crops. I'm getting some blank looks. I said, wheat, barley, oats, more blank looks. And I said, rice. Oh, rice. He knew what rice was. I said, okay, think of it as a really big rice paddy, but not as wet. That was about the best explanation I could give him. Anyway, when I asked him to fly to that silo or line yourself up with this dirt road, we had similar issues. And I soon realised that this young man really was not understanding anything I was telling him. So when we got back to the hangar, we had a bit of a lesson in English slang and Australian culture. So my bad, gee. Anyway, paddocks. We love paddocks, don't we? Paddocks are awesome. They are quintessentially Australian. They're part of our consciousness. They're part of our identity, part of our culture, and part of our experience. You go up and you can see them extending all the way to the horizon in every direction. And when you're on the highway, either side of the road, what do you see? Paddocks, as far as the eye can see. We love them. One of the reasons we love them is that they can teach us some important lessons in life. What can we learn from a paddock? Well, the first thing we can learn is that life actually happens in seasons. The life cycle of a paddock in a year. There's preparation of the soil, followed by planting, or seeding if you like. Then there's a growth phase and a maturation phase, followed by a harvest or stripping. And then the whole thing starts again, unless this paddock is to be left what we call fallow for a year, where nothing's planted in it. Interesting, that growth and productivity cycle takes a year, but fallow also takes a whole year. Fallow basically means that we're resting and restoring the soil, because you get better productivity if there's rest at times. That passage from Ecclesiastes, which was read so beautifully by Julia for us, thank you very much, is actually a very, very ancient poem of contrasting words in each line. So, birth, death, marriages, funerals, laughter, tears, all of the contrasting things that happen to us in life. And it illustrates paddocks very nicely, doesn't it? Obviously, folks back then in ancient times were much more in tune with the natural cycles of day and night and the turning of the seasons. But here's the thing. We too are creatures of our times and our circumstances and our occasions. And we also need to learn to live in harmony with the ebb and flow of life, rather than trying to fight them. So this is one of the key concepts in the book of Ecclesiastes. We are to enjoy the good gifts that God gives us, while also accepting adversity, because they all come in turn. Sometimes they come together. We live in interesting times, don't we? I always feel like I'm responsible for what's happened, because I say to people, may you live in interesting times. So I think what's happening in the world at the moment is all my fault. Now I've got to stop saying that. Anyway, I saw a Facebook post early in this whole pandemic thing. If you can't achieve something during this time, then you lack self-discipline. Well, I must admit I thought that was just a little bit harsh because it really doesn't account for what all of this represents in terms of seasons in each of our lives. It may not be the same for all of us. And so here's the second lesson that we can learn from paddocks. Different crops thrive in different conditions, and they also follow different cycles. So here's the thing. If you want to grow wheat, you're going to plant it in autumn and you'll strip it or harvest it in early summer. It needs warm temperatures, roughly 21 to 24 degrees, and it needs about 310 to 380 millimetres of water early in the season during its growth phase, but then it needs lots of sunshine to dry out before harvest. If you want to grow cotton, different story. Cotton's planted in spring and it's picked in autumn. It needs a deep, well-drained soil with good nutrient content, constant temperatures of 18 to 30 degrees, lots of sunshine, but a minimum of 500 millimetres of water between germination and flowering. So it needs a lot more water. And that's a bit controversial in Australia, isn't it? If you want to grow tea, different story again. Tea needs a warm, humid climate, deep, light, acidic soil, well drained, and a rainfall of about 1,000 millimetres per year. So it does very well at high altitudes and in tropical areas. It can grow well up to about 7,000 feet. And the harvest time actually depends on what variety of tea you're growing. So don't assume that every crop needs the same thing. And we can't assume that all people need exactly the same things to be productive and to thrive. Humans are a bit like crops. We all have different cycles of productivity and we all have different needs. And I think the current pandemic has really demonstrated that, in that different people have done different things in order to survive, be productive, thrive, or rest, or whatever they needed to do. You would be aware we've had the bakers and the cooks who have got stuck into the kitchen at this time, the compulsive exercisers, we've had studiers, and the renovators who have stood in queues for hours outside Bunnings, bless them. We've had the artists and the gardeners and the compulsive cleaners. Everybody does what they need to do. My experience has been a really interesting one. You may be aware I closed the flying school for about 6 weeks early on because I felt that was the right thing to do under the circumstances. So I had a bit of forced downtime, forced landing if you like, and a bit of rest. So what was I planning to do? I was going to be a compulsive exerciser, get fit and strong and be really awesome. What did I do instead? As you can see, it didn't work. Hence the basic black today. And the camera adds 10 kilograms. Thanks very much. Just what I needed. Anyway, the unintended consequences of online church. What did I do instead? I coached and taught my son, my younger son, Carey, in his new venture of yeast cookery. So he became a baker. He was studying at home. Well, maybe not. He was baking. So I fetched ingredients and coached, and once he got sick of baking, he moved on to fudge. Wow. He made some really good fudge. He made lots of fudge. He'd come out to the lounge room and says, "This is 1.5 kilograms of fudge." Hence my problem. Gee, we ate a lot of fudge. We also enjoyed Dallas's cooking adventures. Dallas got into this fellow called Nat's What I Reckon, which is kind of the love child of language that will make a sailor blush and MasterChef. So we've eaten well, and last night we enjoyed a fabulous osso buco. Thank you very much. My husband's a trooper. He's been working throughout, so he didn't get a rest. I've also studied law with Sam, my older son. He's been studying online, and I have learned the finer points of company law, which was very helpful since I'm running a company. And we've had lots of lively discussions on the finer points of Australia's legislative framework. So that's been very entertaining and interesting. I've read piles of books. I also got into some painting. Here we go, I'll show you my painting. Look at that. I call that my pandemic painting. Don't assume that it's creative, it's not. It's actually a paint by numbers. So someone else has done all the creative work and this is just purely therapeutic and time wasting. But there you go. As you can see, I haven't managed to get it finished yet. It's very fiddly, it's very time consuming, and well, I think we're going to need a bigger pandemic. Never mind. But I think mostly what I did was I rested and I chilled out, and I think probably that's what I needed. After not sort of taking a break for 4 years, I needed some rest, yeah. Or maybe what I was doing was crop rotation. You know, crop rotation, where you don't plant the same thing year after year after year after year because you deplete the soil. So a bit of crop rotation, planting something different, is actually really beneficial. And any farmer would tell you that. You'll get much better productivity the following year if you plant something different. So what we need to do, or have to do, or require in order to thrive or be productive isn't always what we expect. Suddenly having more downtime or time may not in fact coincide with being more productive. Some folks need structure and routine and activity to be productive, like my Carey. Some need peace and quiet, and having kids home, that wasn't what they needed at all. Some just need a bit of rest or a bit of crop rotation, and that's all okay because we're all different, and this has represented a different season for all of us. The last lesson that paddocks have to offer us is this one. We don't have control over everything. Is that a surprise? Actually, we don't. We can control where we plant, what we plant, and when we plant, but we can't control a whole bunch of other things, like the rain, the sun, wind, storm, flood, drought, fire, a multitude of other random, arbitrary disruptions. We can't control any of those things. Maybe we need to stop trying. Ecclesiastes 7:14 actually says, when times are good, be happy, but when times are bad, consider this. God has made one as well as the other. Therefore, no one can discover anything about their future. And this is one of the central messages of Ecclesiastes, this ancient book of wisdom. Life happens in seasons, which will include good times and will include adversity. But we do not know what our futures hold. We simply don't. And that can be a bit frightening. Sometimes it's really difficult to make any sense of life or discern any meaning or purpose, except for one thing. What is that one thing? That is the presence of God in our lives. Whatever happens, whatever the season, whether it is preparation, planting, growth, maturation, harvest, fallow, or birth, death, marriage, funeral, joy, tears, whatever it is, our God remains sovereign over all of it. God is the constant in all of this. He is the presence in our lives. God is the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, the great I am. So whatever season you happen to be in at the moment, might be a productive time, might be a fallow time, that's okay. Take heart and be of good courage because God remains sovereign. Amen.